She was a billionaire's daughter, engaged to a tycoon she despised. He was just a waiter with a secret past. When their forbidden love threatens a billion-dollar merger, her father vows to destroy them both. But she knows a devastating secret that could bring down his empire. Will she sacrifice everything for true love? You won't believe the shocking final choice. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Charlotte Bancroft's penthouse apartment. At 26, she had everything money could buy. Designer clothes filling her walk-in closet, a luxury condo overlooking the city, and a black credit card with no limit. But as she stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, all she saw was a prisoner in a gilded cage. Charlotte sighed and applied her lipstick, a shade her father's personal shopper had selected to match the dress she'd be wearing to lunch today. Another business lunch. Another smile to fake. Another deal to witness her father close. The phone rang, displaying father on the screen. Charlotte took a deep breath before answering. "Hello, father." "Charlotte." Harold Bancroft's voice was crisp and commanding, just like in the boardroom. "I expect you're the grand in 30 minutes. Don't be late." "I'm almost ready," Charlotte said. "Who's joining us today?" "Emerson Grayson." Charlotte's stomach tightened. Emerson Grayson was the CEO of Grayson Industries, a European tech giant looking to expand into American markets. Her father had mentioned him several times in recent months, always with unusual approval. "Why is he joining us?" Charlotte asked, though she already suspected the answer. "We have matters to discuss. Family matters." Harold's tone left no room for questions. 30 minutes, Charlotte." The line went dead. Charlotte set down her phone and gripped the edge of the marble countertop. Family matters. Those words always meant the same thing. Harold Bancroft was about to use his daughter as a business asset. The Grand Restaurant occupied the top floor of Bancroft Tower, the 60-story building that served as headquarters for Bancroft Tech. Charlotte stepped out of the elevator, nodding politely to the maitre d', who immediately recognized her. "Miss Bancroft, your father is waiting in the private dining room." "Thank you, Richard." As Charlotte walked through the main dining area, she noticed the usual crowd of executives, investors, and the occasional celebrity. This was where deals worth billions were made over steaks and martinis. This was her father's kingdom. She paused outside the private dining room, smoothing her dress and putting on the smile she perfected over years of being Harold Bancroft's daughter. The smile that said she was perfectly happy, perfectly obedient, perfectly hollow. When she entered, her father rose from his seat. Next to him stood a tall man with dark hair, graying at the temples. Handsome in a cold, calculating way. His tailored suit probably cost more than most people's cars. "Charlotte, there you are." Harold gestured toward the man. "I'd like you to meet Emerson Grayson." Emerson stepped forward, taking Charlotte's hand and bringing it to his lips. His touch was as cold as his eyes. "Miss Bancroft, your father has told me so much about you." "Has he?" Charlotte said, knowing full well her father rarely discussed her except as an extension of himself. "How interesting." Harold shot her a warning glance as they all took their seats. "Emerson's company has developed a new microchip that will revolutionize our smartphone division," Harold explained as waiters silently delivered their first course. "We're discussing a merger that would benefit both our companies tremendously." "Congratulations," Charlotte said flatly. "I'm sure it will be very profitable." "It will be," Emerson said, his accent adding a crisp edge to his words. "But business partnerships are stronger when there are personal connections as well." Charlotte felt her blood run cold as Emerson's eyes traveled over her face, down to her neckline and back up again. She'd seen that look before, not desire, but assessment, like she was a thoroughbred at auction. "Emerson comes from an excellent family," Harold continued, as if discussing a stock portfolio rather than a human being. "Old European money, excellent connections. He's been looking for a suitable wife for some time." Charlotte nearly choked on her water. "And you volunteer me?" Harold's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I suggested you might be compatible. You're 26, Charlotte. It's time you settled down with someone appropriate." "Someone appropriate for the Bancroft name, you mean?" Charlotte said, her voice tight. Of course. Harold didn't even bother to deny it. The merger will go more smoothly with a family connection. The board likes stability. And what about what I like? Charlotte asked. Emerson chuckled. Your father assured me you understand family duty, Charlotte. That's a quality I admire in a wife. I'm not your wife. Not yet, Harold cut in. But we've agreed that an engagement will be beneficial for everyone. The announcement will be made at the charity gala next month. Charlotte stared at her father in disbelief. You're announcing my engagement to a man I just met? Don't I get any say in this? Harold set down his fork carefully. Charlotte, you've had plenty of time to find someone suitable on your own. Your choices have been disappointing. The Bancroft name means something in this world. It's time you accepted your responsibilities. Charlotte looked at Emerson, who was calmly sipping his wine as if they were discussing the weather instead of her future. And what if I refuse? She asked. Harold's smile turned cold. Then you'll find yourself without access to your trust fund, your apartment, or your position at the foundation. You're a Bancroft, Charlotte. Start acting like one. The threat hung in the air between them. Charlotte knew it wasn't empty. Her father controlled everything in her life, her money, her home, her job at the Bancroft Foundation. Without his approval, she had nothing. I think you'll find me a generous husband, Emerson added, misinterpreting her silence for acceptance. You'll want for nothing. Except love, Charlotte thought. Except freedom. Except happiness. But she said nothing. She'd learned long ago that arguing with Harold Bancroft was futile. The weeks leading up to the gala passed in a blur of forced smiles and pretend enthusiasm. Charlotte went through the motions, meeting with event planners, approving menus, and enduring dates with Emerson that felt more like business meetings than romantic encounters. Emerson was polite but distant, more interested in discussing quarterly projections than getting to know her. When he kissed her goodnight, always a cold, perfunctory peck on the cheek, she felt nothing but dread. The night before the gala, Charlotte visited her mother's grave. Elizabeth Bancroft had been dead for 15 years, but Charlotte still came here when she needed to feel less alone. He's selling me off, Mom, Charlotte whispered, placing fresh flowers on the grave. Just like he sold you. Did you ever love him, or were you just another merger? The marble headstone offered no answers, just the cold comfort of familiar silence. The Bancroft estate was transformed for the gala. Thousands of white roses and twinkling lights turned the garden into a fairy tale setting. A string quartet played as guests in designer gowns, and tuxedos mingled, glasses of champagne in hand. Charlotte stood in her bedroom, staring at herself in the full-length mirror. Her dress, a creation in pale blue silk that had cost more than some people made a year, made her look like a princess from a storybook. But her eyes told a different story. You look beautiful, said Maria, her personal assistant. The dress is perfect. It feels like a costume, Charlotte replied. Like I'm playing a part in someone else's story. Maria squeezed her hand sympathetically. Just get through tonight. Things have a way of working out. Not in the Bancroft family, they don't, Charlotte said, but she forced a smile anyway. But thank you for trying. Downstairs, the party was in full swing. Charlotte made her entrance on her father's arm, feeling hundreds of eyes on her. She spotted Emerson across the room, looking impatient. Smile, Harold commanded through clenched teeth. This is the happiest day of your life. Charlotte smiled, her cheeks aching with the effort. As they made their way through the crowd, accepting congratulations from people she barely knew, she felt a growing sense of panic. This was really happening. In a few minutes, her father would announce her engagement to a man who saw her as nothing more than a business asset. I need a moment, she whispered to Harold. I'll be right back. Before he could object, she slipped away, heading toward a quiet corner of the ballroom. She needed air, space, anything to calm the racing of her heart. That's when she saw him. A young man in the uniform of the catering staff was arranging wine glasses on a tray. He was tall, with broad shoulders and dark skin that contrasted with his crisp white shirt. His movements were precise, efficient, yet somehow defiant, as if he understood exactly where he was but refused to be intimidated by the wealth surrounding him. Charlotte watched as a guest snapped her fingers at him. not even bothering to look at his face as she demanded more champagne. The server's expression didn't change, but Charlotte saw a flash of something in his eyes. Dignity, perhaps, or quiet rebellion. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up. Their eyes met across the room, and Charlotte felt something she hadn't experienced in years. A genuine connection. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then he gave her a small, almost imperceptible nod. Not the deferential bow of a servant, but the acknowledgement of one human being to another. Charlotte. Her father's voice broke the spell. "It's time." Charlotte reluctantly turned away, but she could still feel the server's eyes on her as Harold led her to the center of the ballroom. Emerson joined them, taking Charlotte's hand in his cold grip. Harold tapped his glass for attention. The music stopped, and the crowd fell silent. "Ladies and gentlemen," Harold began, his voice carrying across the room, "it gives me great pleasure to announce the engagement of my daughter, Charlotte, to Emerson Grayson of Grayson Industries. This union represents not only a joining of two hearts, but of two great corporate families." The crowd applauded. Emerson raised Charlotte's hand to his lips for another lifeless kiss. Charlotte smiled automatically, but her eyes drifted across the room, seeking out the server. He was watching her, his expression unreadable. As Emerson slipped a massive diamond ring onto her finger, a ring that felt like a shackle, Charlotte kept her eyes on the server's face, drawing strength from the quiet dignity she saw there. "A toast," Harold commanded, raising his glass. "To Charlotte and Emerson. May their union bring prosperity to all." To Charlotte and Emerson, the crowd echoed. Charlotte raised her glass, going through the motions even as she felt herself suffocating under the weight of her father's expectations. As the guests swarmed forward to offer congratulations, she lost sight of the server. Later, as dinner was being served, Charlotte excused herself, claiming she needed fresh air. Instead, she made her way to the kitchen, where the catering staff was busy preparing dessert. She hesitated in the doorway, suddenly unsure of what she was doing. What did she hope to accomplish? What would she even say? Before she could retreat, she saw him again. He was loading a tray with champagne flutes, his back to her. Without thinking, Charlotte stepped into the kitchen. "Excuse me," she said softly. He turned, surprise registering on his face when he saw who had spoken. Up close, she could see his eyes were a warm brown, his features strong and defined. "Miss Bancroft," he said, his voice deeper than she'd expected. "Can I help you with something?" Charlotte faltered. What could she say? That she'd followed him because he was the only person in the room who seemed real? "I wanted to apologize for that woman earlier, the one who snapped her fingers at you." He raised an eyebrow. "No need to apologize. It happens all the time." "It shouldn't," Charlotte said firmly. A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "No, it shouldn't. But that's the world we live in, isn't it?" Charlotte felt a blush rising to her cheeks. "I'm Charlotte." "I know who you are," he replied. Then, after a pause, "I'm Micah Jordan. It's nice to meet you, Micah." The words felt inadequate, but they were all she had. "Congratulations on your engagement," Micah said, though something in his tone suggested it wasn't entirely sincere. "Thank you," Charlotte replied automatically, then added in a lower voice, "though I'm not sure congratulations are in order." Micah's eyes widened slightly, and for a moment it seemed like he might say something. But then another server entered the kitchen, and the moment was broken. "Charlotte." Harold's voice boomed from the doorway. "What are you doing in the kitchen?" Charlotte turned to see her father standing there, his face a mask of controlled anger. Behind him, Emerson looked more annoyed than concerned. "I was just getting some water," Charlotte lied. Harold's eyes darted to Micah, then back to Charlotte. "Your fiancé is looking for you. The guests are waiting." "Of course," Charlotte said. "I'm coming." As she followed her father out, she glanced back at Micah. He was watching her go, his expression unreadable. "Stay away from the staff, Charlotte," Harold muttered as they walked. "You're a Bancroft, not some common girl who chats up waiters." Charlotte said nothing, but she felt a small flame of rebellion ignite inside her. For the first time in years, she'd had a real conversation, brief as it was. She'd been seen as a person, not a pawn. And she wanted more. The rest of the evening passed in a haze of fake smiles and empty congratulations. Charlotte performed her role perfectly, clinging to Emerson's arm and accepting good wishes from people who didn't know her at all. But her eyes kept searching the room, finding Micah as he moved efficiently among the guests. Once or twice, their gazes met, and Charlotte felt a jolt of connection that was more real than anything she'd experienced with Emerson. As the party wound down, Charlotte found herself standing on the terrace, away from the crowd. The weight of the diamond ring on her finger felt unbearable. "Not enjoy your engagement party?" a voice asked. Charlotte turned to find Micah standing there, a tray of empty glasses in his hands. "Is it that obvious?" she asked. Micah shrugged, only to someone who's looking. "And you're looking?" Charlotte couldn't keep the hope from her voice. "I see someone trapped," Micah said simply. "I know what that looks like." Charlotte felt tears threatening to spill. No one had ever seen through her facade so clearly. "I should go," Micah said, glancing over his shoulder. "Your father wouldn't approve of this conversation." "My father doesn't approve of anything I do," Charlotte replied bitterly. Micah hesitated, then set down his tray and pulled a small notebook from his pocket. He scribbled something on a page, tore it out, and handed it to Charlotte. "If you ever need to talk to someone who sees you," he said quietly, "that's where I work most mornings. Bailey's Cafe, downtown." Charlotte took the paper, her fingers brushing against his. Even that small contact sent a shiver through her. "Why would you do this?" she asked. "You don't know me." Micah's eyes met hers, serious and sincere. "Sometimes you don't need to know someone to see them." Charlotte Bancroft. Before she could respond, he picked up his tray and disappeared back into the house, leaving Charlotte with a scrap of paper clutched in her hand and the first real hope she'd felt in years. Inside, Harold was saying goodbye to the last of the guests. Emerson stood beside him, checking his watch impatiently. "Ah, there you are," Harold said when he spotted Charlotte. "Emerson is leaving. Say good night to your fiancé." Charlotte dutifully kissed Emerson's cheek, feeling nothing as his arm briefly encircled her waist. "I'll call you tomorrow," Emerson said, his tone making it sound more like a business appointment than a romantic gesture. "We have plans to discuss." After he left, Harold turned to Charlotte, his expression severe. "You could have been more enthusiastic tonight. Emerson is an important connection." "Is that all he is?" Charlotte asked. "A connection? He's your future husband," Harold replied coldly. "And he'll be good for Bancroft Tech. That should be enough for you." Charlotte stared at her father, the man who had shaped her entire life without ever asking what she wanted. "And what if it's not enough? What if I want more?" Harold's laugh was without humor. "More than wealth, position, and security? Don't be naive, Charlotte. That's all there is." As Charlotte climbed the stairs to her old bedroom, kept exactly as it had been when she lived at home, she thought about her father's words. Was that really all there was? Wealth, position, security? She pulled Micah's note from her clutch and read the address he'd written. Bailey's Cafe, 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. For the first time in years, Charlotte felt something stirring inside her, not just rebellion, but hope. The possibility that there might be more to life than being Harold Bancroft's daughter or Emerson Grayson's wife. Tomorrow, she decided. Tomorrow she would find out. As she drifted off to sleep, Charlotte's dreams were filled not with diamonds and corporate mergers, but with warm brown eyes that really saw her. And for once, the future didn't seem quite so bleak. Charlotte woke early the next morning, her heart racing with anticipation. She stared at the piece of paper on her nightstand. Bailey's Cafe, 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. Micah would be there, a man who had looked at her and actually seen her, not her father's money or her family name. She dressed carefully, choosing simple jeans and a sweater instead of her usual designer clothes. Looking in the mirror, she hesitated before wiping off most of her makeup. She wanted Micah to see the real Charlotte, not the polished Bancroft heiress. As she drove downtown in her luxury SUV, Charlotte felt like a teenager sneaking out past curfew. It was ridiculous. She was 26 years old, engaged to be married. Yet here she was, heart fluttering at the thought of seeing a man she barely knew. Bailey's Cafe was nothing like the upscale restaurants Charlotte usually frequented. It was small and cozy, with mismatched chairs and local artwork on the walls. Through the window, she could see Micah behind the counter, pouring coffee for an elderly couple. For a moment, Charlotte sat in her car, watching him. He moved with the same quiet dignity she'd noticed at the party, but here his smile came more easily. He laughed at something the old man said, and Charlotte felt a strange tug in her chest. Before she could lose her nerve, Charlotte got out of the car and walked into the cafe. A bell jingled above the door, and several heads turned her way. She felt suddenly self-conscious, aware that she still looked out of place despite her casual clothes. Micah looked up, and surprise flickered across his face. Then he smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. "Good morning," he said as she approached the counter. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "Neither was I," Charlotte admitted. "Coffee?" he asked, already reaching for a mug. "Please." He poured her a cup and nodded toward a small table in the corner. "I'm due for a break in 5 minutes. If you want to wait." "I'll wait," Charlotte said, taking the coffee and settling at the table. True to his word, Micah joined her 5 minutes later, carrying his own mug. "So," he said, sitting across from her, "what brings Charlotte Bancroft to Bailey's Cafe?" "You invited me," Charlotte replied. "I did, but I didn't think you'd actually show up." Micah studied her face. "Shouldn't you be planning your wedding or something?" Charlotte winced. "That's exactly what I'm trying to escape. You didn't look very happy at your engagement party." "That's because I'm not happy," Charlotte said, surprising herself at her honesty. "I only met Emerson a few weeks ago. The whole thing is a business arrangement set up by my father." Micah raised his eyebrows. "People still do that? Arranged marriages. In my father's world, everything is a business transaction, even his daughter's future." Charlotte took a sip of her coffee. "My mother used to say that Harold Bancroft sees people as either assets or liabilities." "And which are you?" Micah asked. "An asset, unfortunately. One he's leveraging to secure a merger with Emerson's company." Micah was quiet for a moment. "Why don't you say no?" Charlotte laughed, but there was no humor in it. You don't say no to Harold Bancroft, especially when he controls every aspect of your life, your home, your money, your job. "There's always a choice," Micah said softly. "Is there?" Charlotte challenged. "What would you do in my place? Walk away from everything you've ever known? Become nobody overnight?" "I am nobody," Micah said with a shrug. "At least by your father's standards. It's not so bad." Charlotte studied him, intrigued by his calm confidence. "Tell me about yourself, Micah Jordan. Who are you when you're not serving champagne to rich people or coffee to morning commuters?" A shadow crossed Micah's face. "Not much to tell. I work here most days. Pick up catering gigs for extra cash. Try to keep my head above water." "That's what you do, not who you are," Charlotte pressed. Micah's eyes met hers, as if deciding whether she was worth trusting. Finally, he said, "I used to write. Poetry, mostly. I was going to be a teacher. Had a scholarship to state. Was studying English and education." "What happened?" Charlotte asked. "Life happened. My mom got sick, cancer. I dropped out to take care of her. After she died, I just never went back. Too many bills to pay, too many responsibilities." "I'm sorry about your mom," Charlotte said softly. "I lost mine too. Car accident when I was 11. "That's rough," Micah said. "Were you close?" "She was the only person who protected me from my father," Charlotte said. "After she died, I was just another asset for him to manage." They fell into a comfortable silence, each lost in memories. "Your break must be almost over," Charlotte said eventually. Micah checked his watch and nodded. "Yeah, but I'm here until 2 if you want to stick around." Charlotte thought about her empty day ahead. A lunch meeting with her wedding planner, a fitting for her engagement photos, a call with Emerson to discuss the prenuptial agreement. "I'd like that," she said, "if you don't mind me taking up space." "Stay as long as you want," Micah said, standing up. "We got free refills and decent Wi-Fi." As he walked back to the counter, Charlotte felt lighter than she had in years. For the next few hours, she sipped coffee and watched Micah work, occasionally catching his eye and sharing a smile. It was the most peaceful morning she could remember. "Your little disappearing act yesterday was noticed," Harold said when Charlotte answered his call that evening. Emerson was not pleased. Charlotte closed her eyes, picturing her father in his vast office at the top of Bancroft Tower. "I had a headache. I needed some air." "A headache that lasted all day? You missed your appointment with the wedding planner." "I forgot," Charlotte lied, thinking of her day at Bailey's Cafe, of Micah's smile when he'd sat with her during his lunch break. Harold's sigh was heavy with disapproval. "This merger is critical, Charlotte. Emerson's technology could double our market share overnight. Don't jeopardize it with your childish behavior." "Is that all you care about? Market share?" "I care about the Bancroft legacy," Harold snapped. "Something you seem determined to undervalue. Do you have any idea how many people would kill to be in your position?" Charlotte thought of Micah, of his quiet dignity, despite all he'd lost. "Maybe I don't want this position." There was a dangerous silence on the other end of the line. When Harold spoke again, his voice was cold. "I've scheduled dinner with Emerson tomorrow night, 8 o'clock at Le Cirque. Be there, Charlotte. And do try to act like a grateful daughter for once." The line went dead before Charlotte could respond. She threw her phone onto the couch and walked to the window of her penthouse. The city sparkled below, a carpet of light stretching to the horizon. From this height, everything looked small, insignificant, just like she felt whenever her father spoke to her. Before she could second-guess herself, Charlotte picked up her phone and dialed the number Micah had given her before she left the cafe. He answered on the third ring. "Hello? It's Charlotte," she said, suddenly nervous. "I hope it's okay that I called." "Of course," Micah said, his voice warming. "Everything okay?" "Not really," Charlotte admitted. "My father is being my father." "Want to talk about it?" Charlotte hesitated. "Actually, I was wondering if you'd meet me. Tomorrow? For lunch, maybe?" There was a pause. "Are you sure that's a good idea? Your father—" "I don't care what my father thinks," Charlotte interrupted, surprising herself with the force behind her words. "Please, Micah, I need to see a friendly face." Another pause and, "Okay, but not Bailey's. Your car is a bit conspicuous there." Charlotte smiled. "I know a place. Quiet, out of the way. No one from my father's circle will be caught dead there." They arranged to meet at a small diner on the edge of town. As Charlotte hung up, she felt a flutter of excitement mixed with fear. She was playing a dangerous game. If her father found out... But for once, Charlotte didn't care about the consequences. She only knew that when she was with Micah, she felt real, and that feeling was worth any risk. The diner was exactly as Charlotte remembered it, a relic from the 1950s with vinyl booths and a jukebox in the corner. She discovered it during her college years, one of the few places she could go without being recognized as Harold Bancroft's daughter. Micah was already there when she arrived, sitting in a booth at the back. He stood when he saw her, and Charlotte felt that now familiar flutter in her chest. "Nice place," he said as she slid into the booth across from him. "Very retro." "I used to come here when I needed to escape," Charlotte explained. "The owners don't know who I am, and they don't care. It's freeing." "I get that," Micah said. "Sometimes you just want to be nobody for a while." "Exactly." They ordered burgers and milkshakes, and for a while, they just talked. Micah told her about his younger brother, Marcus, who was serving time for a robbery gone wrong. "He was just a kid," Micah said, pain evident in his eyes. 17, hanging with the wrong crowd. "After Mom died, I was working so much I didn't see the signs until it was too late." "You can't blame yourself," Charlotte said, reaching across the table to touch his hand. "You were doing your best." "My best wasn't good enough," Micah said bitterly. "Now he's doing 5 years, and I'm working 3 jobs to keep our mom's house and save enough for when he gets out." "Is that why you gave up writing?" Charlotte asked. "Your poetry?" Micah looked surprised that she'd remembered. "Yeah, hard to think about meter and rhyme when you're trying to keep the lights on." "Do you miss it?" "Every day," Mike admitted. "Writing was the one thing that made me feel, I don't know, like I mattered. like I had something to say that was worth hearing. "I'd like to read your poem sometime," Charlotte said. Micah laughed, but it was a warm sound. "They're probably terrible. College kid, angst and all that." "I doubt that," Charlotte said. "You see things others don't. I bet your poetry reflects that." Micah studied her face. "You're not what I expected, Charlotte Bancroft." "What did you expect?" "I don't know. Someone more entitled, I guess. Someone who wouldn't sit in a rundown diner eating burgers with a guy who serves her champagne at parties." Charlotte smiled sadly. "That's the person my father wants me to be. But it's not me. It never has been." "So, who are you really?" Micah asked, his eyes intense. Charlotte looked down at her hands. "I don't know anymore. Sometimes I think I never got the chance to find out." They finished their meal in comfortable silence. As they were leaving, Micah handed Charlotte a folded piece of paper. "What's this?" she asked. "One of my poems," he said, looking slightly embarrassed. "You said you wanted to read one." Charlotte carefully tucked the paper into her purse, touched by his trust. "Thank you." Outside, they lingered by her car, neither wanting the afternoon to end. "I should go," Charlotte said reluctantly. "I have a dinner with Emerson tonight." Micah's expression dimmed slightly. "Right, your fiancé." "He's not." Charlotte stopped herself. Legally, Emerson was her fiancé, no matter how much she wished otherwise. "It's complicated." "Life usually is," Micah said. He hesitated, then added, "Be careful, Charlotte. Men like your father and Emerson, they don't like losing what they consider theirs." "I'm not theirs," Charlotte said fiercely. "I don't belong to anyone." Micah's smile was sad. "Tell them that." Before Charlotte could respond, Micah leaned forward and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The simple gesture sent a shock through her entire body. "See you around, Charlotte Bancroft," he said softly, then turned and walked away. Charlotte watched him go, her heart racing. It wasn't until she was driving home that she remembered the poem. At a red light, she pulled it from her purse and unfolded it. The title was simple, Seen. As Charlotte read the words about being truly seen beyond masks and expectations, about finding freedom in being known, tears filled her eyes. Micah had written this years ago, but it felt like he'd written it for her. For the first time in her life, Charlotte felt understood, and it was both wonderful and terrifying. Dinner with Emerson was exactly what Charlotte expected, cold, formal, and focused entirely on business. They sat in a private dining room at Le Cirque, surrounded by flickering candles and expensive wine, and discussed a merger as if it were the only thing that mattered. "Your father tells me you're being difficult about the wedding plans," Emerson said as they waited for dessert. "That's not like you, Charlotte." "You've known me for a month," Charlotte pointed out. "You have no idea what I'm like." Emerson's eyes narrowed. "I know you understand your responsibilities to the Bancroft name. That's all I need to know about my future wife." "And what about love?" Charlotte asked. "Doesn't that matter to you at all?" "Love." Emerson laughed dismissively. "That's for greeting cards and movies, Charlotte. Real marriages, successful marriages, are built on mutual benefit and respect." "Is that what your parents had?" A shadow crossed Emerson's face. "My parents had an arrangement that worked for 40 years. My father built his empire, and my mother managed the social aspects of their lives. They were a team. Were they happy?" "They were successful," Emerson said, as if that answered the question. "As we will be." Charlotte looked at this man who would soon be her husband and felt nothing but emptiness. No warmth, no connection, not even potential for friendship. Just a cold business arrangement disguised as a marriage. "I need to use the restroom," she said, standing abruptly. In the privacy of the bathroom stall, Charlotte pulled out Micah's poem and read it again. The contrast between the warmth of his words and the chill of Emerson's could not have been more stark. When she returned to the table, Emerson was on his phone, frowning at the screen. "Problem?" Charlotte asked, not really caring. "Just business," Emerson replied, putting his phone away. "The Shanghai deal is getting complicated. I'll need to fly there next week. I thought we were supposed to look at wedding venues next week." Emerson waved a dismissive hand. "You can handle that. Just choose something appropriate for our status. My mother will help if you need guidance. Of course. Why would Emerson be involved in planning his own wedding? It was just another item on a checklist for him. Fine, Charlotte said. I'll manage without you. Emerson nodded, missing the sarcasm in her voice. Good. Now, about the prenuptial agreement. My lawyers have drafted the initial terms. Your father's team will review them tomorrow. Don't I get to review them? Charlotte asked. It is my marriage. Emerson looked surprised, as if the thought hadn't occurred to him. If you want to, of course. Though I doubt you'll understand the finer legal points. I have a business degree from Wharton, Charlotte reminded him. I think I can handle a contract. Of course, Emerson said, his tone placating. I'll have my assistant send you a copy, though I'm sure your father will explain anything you find confusing. Charlotte bit back a retort. There was no point arguing with Emerson. He, like her father, saw her as an accessory, not a partner. The rest of the dinner passed in strained conversation about the wedding, the merger, and Emerson's upcoming trip. Not once did he ask about her day, her thoughts, or her feelings. Not once did he look at her the way Micah had, like she was a person worth knowing. By the time Emerson dropped her off at her penthouse with another cold peck on the cheek, Charlotte had made a decision. She couldn't marry this man. Not without at least trying to find out who she really was and what she really wanted. And right now, what she wanted was to see Micah again. Over the next 2 weeks, Charlotte created a careful routine. Mornings at Bailey's Cafe, where she could sit and talk with Micah during his breaks. Afternoons filled with obligatory wedding preparations, meetings with her father, and appearances with Emerson when he wasn't traveling. She lived a double life. The perfect Bancroft daughter in public, and herself just Charlotte with Micah. They grew closer with each meeting. Charlotte learned about Micah's dreams of opening a community center for at-risk youth, of teaching poetry and literature to kids who, like his brother, needed guidance. Micah learned about Charlotte's passion for art, a hobby her father had dismissed as frivolous, and her secret desire to work with children instead of running her father's charitable foundation. One rainy afternoon, they sat in Charlotte's car outside the cafe, listening to the patter of raindrops on the roof. I never understood why people risk everything for love, Charlotte said, watching the rain trace patterns on the windshield. In movies, books, they give up fortunes, families, everything. It seemed so foolish. And now, Micah asked quietly. Charlotte turned to look at him. Now I'm starting to understand. The air between them crackled with tension. Micah reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and touched her cheek. This is dangerous, Charlotte, he said, his voice rough. You're engaged. Your father would destroy me if he knew. I don't care, Charlotte whispered. You should, Micah insisted. Your world and mine, they don't mix. People like your father make sure of that. I'm not my father. No, Micah agreed, his eyes soft. You're nothing like him. That's what scares me. Before Charlotte could ask what he meant, Micah leaned forward and kissed her. It was gentle at first, hesitant, but when Charlotte responded, it deepened into something urgent and real. When they finally broke apart, Charlotte felt as if something fundamental had shifted inside her. This feeling was what people risked everything for. This connection that made everything else seem trivial by comparison. I should go, Micah said, his forehead resting against hers. Your father has people everywhere. If they see us... One more minute, Charlotte pleaded, holding on to the front of his shirt. Just one more minute of being real. Micah kissed her again, briefer this time, but no less intense. You are real, Charlotte, the most real person I know. Don't let them make you forget that. As he slipped out of the car and ran through the rain back to the cafe, Charlotte touched her lips, still feeling the warmth of his kiss. For the first time in her life, she felt fully alive, and she knew without a doubt that she couldn't go through with the wedding to Emerson. Now she just had to find the courage to tell her father. Absolutely not, Harold thundered, slamming his fist on his desk. Have you lost your mind, Charlotte? The merger is set to close next month. The wedding is in 6 weeks. The invitations have been sent. Charlotte stood her ground, though her knees felt weak. I can't marry him, father. I don't love him. I never will. Love. Harold scoffed. What does love have to do with marriage? Your mother and I had a business arrangement, Charlotte finished. And were you happy, father? Was she? Harold's face hardened. We had a good life, a successful life, as you will with Emerson. I want more than success, Charlotte insisted. I want happiness. I want to be with someone who sees me, not just a Bancroft name. And who might that be? Harold asked, his voice dangerously quiet. This mystery man who's filled your head with such nonsense. Charlotte hesitated. She couldn't mention Micah. Her father would destroy him, without a second thought. There's no one else, she lied. I just know Emerson isn't right for me. Harold studied her face, his eyes cold. You're lying. I know you, Charlotte. You wouldn't throw away everything for nothing. Who is he? There's no one, Charlotte repeated. Harold leaned back in his chair. Fine. Keep your secret for now. But understand this. You will marry Emerson Grayson. The future of Bancroft Tech depends on this merger. I won't let your childish romanticism destroy what I built. And if I refuse? Harold's smile was chilling. Then you'll find yourself cut off. No money, no apartment, no job. Not even your trust fund. I had the terms amended last year. It's contingent on my approval of your life choices. Charlotte felt the blood drain from her face. You can't do that. I can and I will, Harold said coldly. You're my daughter, Charlotte. Everything you have, everything you are, comes from me. Don't forget that. Charlotte turned and fled the office, tears burning her eyes. In the elevator down from the executive floor, she leaned against the wall, trying to catch her breath. Her father had outmaneuvered her, as he always did. Without access to her trust fund, she had nothing. No way to support herself. No way to help Micah with his dreams of a community center. She'd be just another burden on his already difficult life. As the elevator doors opened on the lobby, Charlotte made a decision. She would see Micah one last time, and then she would do what Bancrofts had always done, her duty. Micah was waiting for her at their usual spot in the park. His smile faded when he saw her face. What happened? He asked, taking her hands. My father, Charlotte said simply. He's threatening to cut me off completely if I don't marry Emerson. No money, no job, nothing. So, Micah said, people live without trust funds every day, Charlotte. I do. It's not about the money, Charlotte said, though that wasn't entirely true. It's about what I could do with it. Help your brother when he gets out. Fund your community center. Make a difference. Those are my dreams, not yours, Micah said gently. What do you want, Charlotte? Not for me, not for your father. For you. Charlotte looked into his eyes, so warm and understanding. I want you, she whispered. But I'm scared, Micah. I don't know how to be anyone but Harold Bancroft's daughter. Micah cupped her face in his hands. You're more than that. You always have been. You just never got the chance to find out who. And if I fail, then you fail, Micah said simply, and you try again. That's what the rest of us do. Charlotte leaned into his touch, drawing strength from his certainty. My father won't stop looking for me. And when he finds out about you, he'll do everything he can to hurt you. Let him try, Micah said, a steely determination in his voice. I've faced worse than angry rich men. Have you? Charlotte asked, genuinely curious. Micah's smile was sad. Growing up black in a neighborhood the police considered a problem to be solved rather than a community to be protected? Yeah, I've faced worse. Charlotte felt ashamed of her own privileged fears. I'm sorry. I didn't mean... Don't apologize, Micah interrupted. Your fears are valid too, Charlotte. Different, but valid. They sat in silence for a moment, hand in hand, each lost in thought. What would you do? Charlotte finally asked. If you were me? I can't answer that, Micah said. But I can tell you what I see when I look at you. I see someone stronger than she knows. Someone who deserves more than being a pawn in her father's game. Someone I've fallen in love with. Charlotte's breath caught. You love me? Against my better judgment, Mike admitted with a small smile. But yeah, I do. And that's why I have to tell you, whatever you decide, it has to be for you. Not for me, not for your father. For you. Charlotte looked at this man who had seen her, really seen her, from the very beginning, who had shown her what love could be, who had made her feel real for the first time in her life. And she knew what she had to do. I need time, she said, to figure some things out. Can you give me that? Micah nodded, though she could see the fear in his eyes. Whatever you need. Charlotte leaned forward and kissed him, trying to put everything she felt into that one gesture. When they broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. No matter what happened, she whispered, remember that you showed me what it means to be real, and I'll never forget that. As Charlotte walked away, she felt Micah's eyes on her back. She didn't turn around. If she did, she might never leave, and she had preparations to make. Charlotte sat at her dining room table, surrounded by paperwork, bank statements, property deeds, investment portfolios, her entire financial life laid out before her. For the first time, she was taking a hard look at what she actually had versus what her father controlled. The results were sobering. Her trust fund, the one her mother had set up for her, had indeed been amended to include conditions about her father's approval of her life choices. Her position at the Bancroft Foundation came with a generous salary, but it was a job her father could take away with a single phone call. Her penthouse was owned by a Bancroft subsidiary, not by her personally. What did she actually own? Her car, some jewelry, the clothes in her closet, and a small account her grandmother had left her years ago, one her father didn't know about, because Grandma Rose had never trusted Harold Bancroft. It wasn't much, but it was something, a start. Charlotte's phone buzzed with a text from Emerson. Dinner tonight, 8 p.m. Need to discuss wedding venue. She ignored it and continued sorting through her papers. If she was going to break free from her father's control, she needed a plan, and for the first time in her life, she was determined to make one without Harold Bancroft's help. You're late, Emerson said coldly when Charlotte finally arrived at the restaurant 30 minutes past their agreed time. Traffic, Charlotte lied, sliding into her seat. In truth, she'd been meeting with a financial advisor, one not connected to her father, to discuss her limited options. I ordered for you, Emerson said, gesturing to the plate of salmon in front of her. The chef prepared it specially. Charlotte looked down at the food she hadn't chosen. Another small control, another decision made for her, just like her entire life had been. Thank you, she said automatically, picking up her fork. I've been looking at wedding venues, Emerson continued, not noticing her lack of enthusiasm. The plaza's booked on our date, but the St. Regis has an opening. Very exclusive. Good media coverage. Is that important to you? Charlotte asked. Media coverage for our wedding? Emerson looked surprised by the question. Of course. The merger will be announced the same week. The publicity will boost both our stock prices. How romantic, Charlotte murmured. Emerson frowned. You're in a strange mood tonight, Charlotte. Is something wrong? Charlotte set down her fork. Do you ever think about love, Emerson? What? Love. The emotion. The connection between two people who actually care about each other. Emerson looked uncomfortable. Charlotte, we discussed this. Our marriage is about building something meaningful together, a business alliance that will benefit both our family for generations. But what about us? The actual people who have to live in this marriage? Don't you want more than a business partner? I respect you, Emerson said stiffly. I admire your background, your education, your social connections. What more is there? Charlotte stared at him. This handsome, wealthy, empty man who saw people as assets, just like her father did. Everything, she whispered. There's everything more. Emerson's phone buzzed, and he checked it immediately, already dismissing their conversation. Excuse me, I need to take this. It's the Shanghai team. As he walked away from the table, Charlotte felt a strange sense of calm wash over her. She'd been right to question her future with this man. There was nothing there for her. No warmth, no understanding, no possibility of growth or joy. When Emerson returned to the table, Charlotte had made up her mind. "I can't marry you," she said quietly. Emerson stared at her, his expression more annoyed than hurt. "Don't be ridiculous. Charlotte, the wedding is in 5 weeks. Everything is arranged." "I'm sorry," Charlotte said, and she was not for her decision, but for the cold transaction their relationship had always been. "But I can't spend my life with someone who doesn't see me as a person, who doesn't love me." "Love," Emerson scoffed. "This is about that fantasy again? Charlotte, grow up. People like us don't marry for love. We marry for advantage." "Maybe you're right," Charlotte said, standing up. "Maybe people like us don't marry for love. But I don't want to be people like us anymore." She placed her napkin on the table and turned to leave. "Your father will be furious," Emerson called after her. "He'll cut you off completely." Charlotte paused. "I know. Then why? What could possibly be worth giving up everything?" Charlotte looked back at him. This man who would never understand. "The chance to be real," she said simply and walked out of the restaurant. The next morning, Charlotte woke to a barrage of missed calls and angry texts from both her father and Emerson. She ignored them all and made her way to Bailey's Cafe. Micah was behind the counter, serving the morning rush. His face lit up when he saw her, but his smile faded as he took in her serious expression. "Can we talk?" she asked when he approached with a coffee pot. "My break's in 10 minutes, he said. "Everything okay?" "No," Charlotte admitted, "but it might be eventually." Those 10 minutes felt like hours. When Micah finally joined her at their usual table, Charlotte took a deep breath. "I told Emerson I can't marry him," she said. Micah's eyes widened. "How'd he take it?" "Like I'd canceled a business meeting, not ended our engagement," Charlotte said with a bitter laugh. "He doesn't love me, Micah. He never did. To him, I'm just a beneficial connection, a way to secure the merger with my father's company. And your father? Does he know yet?" Charlotte shook her head. "Not from me, but I'm sure Emerson called him right after I left. I haven't answered any of his calls." "What are you going to do?" Charlotte reached across the table and took Micah's hand. "I'm going to find out who I am without the Bancroft name, without my father's money or influence. Just me. Charlotte, I have some money," she continued. "Not much, but enough to start over, to rent a small place, find a job, be normal for once in my life." Micah squeezed her hand. "You know it's not going to be easy, right? Normal life isn't all it's cracked up to be. Bills, crappy apartments, bosses who don't care that you're having a bad day. It's a lot different from what you're used to." "I know," Charlotte said. "I'm not naive, Micah. I understand I've lived a privileged life, but it's been a cage, too. A beautiful one, but still a cage." Micah studied her face. "You're serious about this?" "I've never been more serious about anything in my life." A small smile curved Micah's lips. "Then I'm with you. Whatever you need." Charlotte felt tears prick her eyes. "I don't want to be a burden, Micah. You have enough responsibilities, your brother, your mother's house, your dreams for the community center. You could never be a burden," Micah said firmly. "You're the strongest person I know, Charlotte Bancroft. And if you're brave enough to walk away from everything you've known, I'm brave enough to stand beside you while you do it." The cafe door opened with a bang, and they both turned to look. Charlotte's blood ran cold. Harold Bancroft stood in the doorway, his expensive suit out of place in the modest cafe. Behind him was Jeffrey, his head of security. "Well," Harold said, his voice dangerously calm, "this explains a lot." The cafe fell silent as he strode toward their table. Charlotte stood up, placing herself between her father and Micah. "Father," she said coolly, "what are you doing here?" "Looking for my daughter, who seems to have lost her mind," Harold replied. "Emerson called me last night, said you were babbling about love and breaking off the engagement. Now I see why." His gaze shifted to Micah, who had also risen to his feet. "A waiter," Harold said with contempt. "You're throwing away your future for a waiter." "His name is Micah," Charlotte said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "And he's twice the man Emerson is." Harold laughed, a cold, humorless sound. "Is that so? And what exactly does Micah have to offer you?" A life of poverty? A cramped apartment? A future of struggle and regret? Respect, Charlotte shot back. Honesty. Real feelings instead of business arrangements disguised as relationships. Harold's eyes narrowed. You naive child. Do you think feelings pay bills? Do you think respect keeps a roof over your head? Maybe not, Charlotte admitted. But I'd rather struggle with someone who sees me as a person than live in luxury with people who see me as a possession. Harold turned his attention to Micah. And you? What do you want from my daughter? Her money? Her connections? Nothing, sir, Micah said calmly. I just want her to be happy. How noble, Harold sneered. And I suppose her happiness coincidentally involves being with you? That's her choice, Micah said. Not mine and certainly not yours. Harold's face darkened with anger. Do you have any idea who you're talking to? I could destroy you with one phone call. No one in this city would hire you. That little house you're so desperate to keep, I could have it condemned tomorrow. Micah paled but stood his ground. Threatening me doesn't change how your daughter feels. Father, stop it, Charlotte said, stepping closer to Micah. This isn't his fault. I made my own decision. After he filled your head with romantic nonsense, Harold snapped. Charlotte, think about what you're doing. The merger with Grayson Industries will fall apart without the marriage. Thousands of jobs could be lost. Is that what you want? To hurt innocent people because you developed a schoolgirl crush on help? Charlotte flinched at her father's words. But Micah placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. Don't let him manipulate you, he said softly. That's what he does. Harold's eyes flashed with rage. Jeffrey, he barked. Wait outside. The security chief nodded and left the cafe. The few remaining customers were watching the scene unfold with undisguised interest. Charlotte, Harold said, his voice suddenly gentle. Come home. We can talk about this rationally. I'm sure we can find a solution that works for everyone. Charlotte had heard that tone before, the reasonable, fatherly voice Harold used when he wanted something. It had worked on her countless times in the past. Not today. There's nothing to talk about, Charlotte said firmly. I'm not marrying Emerson. I'm not going to be your pawn anymore. Harold's mask of calm slipped, revealing the cold anger beneath. Then you leave me no choice. As of this moment, you are cut off. Your credit cards, your apartment, your position at the foundation, all gone. If you walk out that door with him, you are no longer my daughter. The words hung in the air between them. Charlotte had expected them, had prepared for them, but they still hurt. I'll always be your daughter, she said quietly, but I won't always be your prisoner. She turned to Micah. I need to go to my apartment and get some things before they change the locks. Will you come with me? Micah nodded, his eyes never leaving Harold's face. Of course. As they walked toward the door, Harold called after them. You'll regret this, Charlotte. When the fantasy fades and reality sets in, you'll come crawling back, and I won't be there to catch you. Charlotte paused, looking back at the man who had controlled her entire life. Goodbye, father. I hope someday you'll understand that some things are worth more than money or power. Don't count on it, Harold said coldly. Outside, Jeffrey stood by a black SUV, watching them impassively. Charlotte and Micah walked past him to her car. Are you okay? Micah asked once they were inside. Charlotte's hands trembled as she gripped the steering wheel. No, she admitted, but I will be. He can't really disown you, can he? He can and he will, Charlotte said. My father never makes empty threats. Micah took her hand. What now? Charlotte took a deep breath. Now we go to my apartment and get whatever we can before they lock me out. Then, I don't know. Find a hotel, I guess. Figure out next steps. You could stay with me, Micah offered. It's not much, but there's space. Charlotte squeezed his hand gratefully. Thank you, but I think I need to do this on my own, at least at first. I need to prove to myself that I can. Micah nodded, understanding in his eyes. Whatever you need, I'm here. As they drove to her penthouse, Charlotte tried to process what had just happened. She had stood up to her father. She had chosen her own path for the first time in her life. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. And she wasn't alone. Mike was beside her, his quiet strength a comfort she'd never known before. Maybe, just maybe, this could work. Miss Bancroft. The doorman said nervously when they arrived at her building. Mr. Bancroft called. I'm afraid I can't let you up to the penthouse. What? Charlotte stared at him in disbelief. Frank, I live here. Not anymore. A cold voice said from behind them. Charlotte turned to see Wilson Reed, her father's lawyer, standing in the lobby with 2 security guards. Mr. Bancroft has terminated your lease, Wilson explained, holding out a document. The penthouse is company property, as you know. My personal belongings are up there, Charlotte protested. My clothes, my jewelry, You may submit a list of items you wish to collect, Wilson interrupted. After verification that they are indeed your personal property and not company assets, arrangements will be made for their delivery to an address of your choosing. Charlotte felt Micah's hand on her back, steadying her. This is insane, she said. He can't just lock me out of my home. I'm afraid he can, Wilson replied, not unkindly. The lease is quite clear. Your right to occupy the premises is contingent on your employment with Bancroft Enterprises or its subsidiaries. As of 1 hour ago, your employment was terminated. Charlotte looked at Frank, the doorman who had greeted her every day for 3 years. Frank, please, just let me up for 10 minutes to get some clothes and my medication. Frank looked genuinely pained. I'm sorry, Miss Bancroft. They've already changed the codes. I couldn't let you up even if I wanted to. Micah stepped forward. This is harassment. You can't prevent someone from accessing their medication. Wilson raised an eyebrow. And you are a friend, Micah said firmly, one who thinks you should be ashamed of yourself for doing Harold Bancroft's dirty work. Wilson had the grace to look uncomfortable. Miss Bancroft, if you'll provide me with the name and location of your medications, I'll have them delivered to you immediately. Charlotte felt utterly defeated. My anxiety pills, bathroom medicine cabinet, and my birth control. Wilson nodded and made a note. And an address for delivery? Charlotte hesitated. She didn't have an address anymore. You can send them to Bailey's Cafe, Micah said, on 3rd Street. I'll make sure she gets them. Wilson nodded again. Very well. I would also suggest, Miss Bancroft, that you contact your father and attempt to resolve the situation. He is quite upset. I'm sure he is, Charlotte said bitterly. His favorite possession just developed a mind of her own. Wilson had no response to that. He simply handed her his card. When you're ready to submit your list of personal items, you can reach me at this number. As they walked back to the car, Charlotte felt numb. It was happening even faster than she'd expected. Within hours of standing up to her father, she had lost her home, her job, and her access to the life she'd always known. It's going to be okay, Micah said, opening the car door for her. We'll figure this out. Charlotte nodded automatically, but inside she was panicking. What had she done? Where would she go? How would she live? Let's go to my place, Micah suggested, at least for tonight. You need to rest, regroup. Okay, Charlotte agreed, too overwhelmed to argue. Your place. Micah's house was small but tidy, located in a working-class neighborhood far from the luxury high-rises and manicured parks Charlotte was used to. It was his mother's house. He explained as he showed her in, the one he was fighting to keep for when his brother got out of prison. It's not much, he said, clearly self-conscious as he led her through the living room with its worn but clean furniture. But it's home. It's lovely, Charlotte said, meaning it. Despite its modest size and furnishings, the house felt warm and welcoming in a way her penthouse never had. Photos of Micah's family lined the walls, his mother with her kind smile, a younger Micah with his arm around a teenage boy who must be his brother, Marcus. Micah showed her to a small bedroom. This was my mom's room, he said. You can stay here. I'll take the couch. Micah, I can't take your mother's room, Charlotte protested. She'd want you to have it, Micah insisted. Mom always had a soft spot for people who needed help. Charlotte looked around the simple bedroom with its floral quilt and family photos on the dresser. It felt sacred somehow, this space that had belonged to a woman who had raised her sons with love despite limited means. Thank you, she said softly, for everything. Micah pulled her into a gentle hug. Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll make a plan. As Charlotte lay in the unfamiliar bed that night, listening to sounds of a neighborhood so different from her own, distant music, a dog barking, the rumble of a truck passing by, she felt a strange mix of terror and peace. Everything had changed in the span of a day. She had no job, no home of her own, very little money compared to what she was used to, but she was free. For the first time in her life, she wasn't following her father's script. Whatever came next would be her choice. Her life, her story. With that thought, she finally drifted off to sleep. Charlotte woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Micah moving around in the kitchen. For a moment, she was disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings. Then yesterday's events came rushing back. The confrontation with her father, being locked out of her apartment, coming to Micah's house. She got up, smoothing her rumpled clothes from yesterday, and made her way to the kitchen. Micah stood at the stove, flipping pancakes. He looked up when she entered and smiled. Morning. Hope I didn't wake you. No, the coffee did, Charlotte said, returning his smile. It smells amazing. Help yourself, Micah said, nodding toward the coffee pot. Mugs are in the cabinet to the right. As Charlotte poured herself coffee, she was struck by how normal this felt. Standing in a kitchen with Micah, morning light streaming through the windows, the simple ritual of breakfast being prepared. I called in sick to both jobs today, Micah said as he set a plate of pancakes on the table. Figured we could use the time to make plans. Charlotte sat down, suddenly aware of the sacrifice he was making. Micah, you didn't have to do that. You can't afford to miss work because of me. One day won't break me, Micah said, joining her at the table. And this is important. We need to figure out your next steps. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, Charlotte savoring the simple, homemade pancakes more than any gourmet breakfast she'd ever had at five-star restaurants. I had an idea last night, Micah said eventually. My friend Sam manages an apartment building not far from here. It's not fancy, but it's clean and safe. He might have a vacant unit he could rent to you. That would be perfect, Charlotte said gratefully. I need to open a new bank account today, too, one my father can't access. And I should start looking for a job. Micah looked thoughtful. What kind of job? What can you do? It was a simple question, but it stumped Charlotte. What could she do? Her position at the Bancroft Foundation had been ceremonial at best. Before that, she'd gone to college, where she'd studied business because her father insisted, not because she had any interest in it. I don't know, she admitted. I've never had a real job, one that I got on my own merits. I mean, what do you like to do? What are you good at? Charlotte thought about it. I like working with children. At the foundation, the only events I really enjoyed were the ones at children's hospitals or schools. Micah smiled. That's a start. There's always need for people who like working with kids. Schools, daycares, after-school programs. Would anyone hire me without experience? Maybe not for a teaching position right away, but there are entry-level jobs. Assistant roles, administrative stuff. It wouldn't pay much, but it would be a foot in the door. Charlotte nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope. I could do that. I want to do that. They spent the morning making lists, plans, phone calls. Micah's friend Sam did indeed have a studio apartment available. Small but clean, and he was willing to waive the credit check if Micah vouched for her. Charlotte used her laptop to research job openings at schools and community centers. Micah helped her draft a resume that emphasized her volunteer work at the foundation rather than her family connections. It was the most productive morning Charlotte could remember having in years. For once, she wasn't going through motions set out by her father or fulfilling obligations to Bancroft name. She was building her own life, one decision at a time. After lunch, they drove to the bank where Charlotte opened a new account, transferring what was left of her grandmother's money. It wasn't much, enough for a few months' rent and expenses if she was careful. But it was hers. Next stop, your new apartment, Micah said as they left the bank. Sam said he'd meet us there with the keys. Charlotte felt a flutter of excitement mixed with fear. Her first real apartment, One she'd pay for herself. One her father couldn't take away from her. As they drove, Charlotte's phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize. "Hello?" she answered cautiously. "Charlotte, it's Emerson." Charlotte's heart sank. "How did you get this number?" "My father had my phone disconnected." "I have resources," Emerson said dismissively. "Listen, I've been talking to your father. This situation has gotten out of hand, but it can still be fixed." "There's nothing to fix," Charlotte said firmly. "I'm not marrying you, Emerson. I thought I made that clear." Emerson sighed, as if dealing with a difficult child. "Charlotte, be reasonable. You've had your little rebellion. You've made your point. Now it's time to come back to reality." "This is my reality now," Charlotte said. "My choice." "Your choice is going to cost a lot of people their jobs," Emerson said coldly. "The merger is falling apart without the marriage agreement. Your father is threatening to back out entirely." Charlotte felt a pang of guilt, but she pushed it aside. "That's not my responsibility, Emerson. If the merger only works with me as a bargaining chip, then maybe it's not a good deal to begin with." "You're being selfish," Emerson snapped. "Thinking only of your feelings instead of the thousands of people who will be affected by your childish behavior." "No, Emerson. Selfish will be marrying someone I don't love just to please my father and secure a business deal. What I'm doing now is being true to myself for the first time in my life." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When Emerson spoke again, his voice was dangerously quiet. "This is about that waiter, isn't it? Your father told me about him." Charlotte glanced at Micah, who was focused on driving, pretending not to listen. "This is about me, Emerson. About what I want for my life. And what you want is him," Emerson said flatly. "A nobody with nothing to offer you." "He offers me respect," Charlotte said. "And kindness. And love. 3 things you never did." "Love," Emerson scoffed. "Will love pay your bills, Charlotte? Will it keep you in the lifestyle you've grown accustomed to? Will it replace everything you're throwing away?" "Maybe not," Charlotte admitted. "But I'd rather have love in a small apartment than emptiness in a mansion." "You say that now," Emerson said. "Let's see how you feel in a month, when the novelty wears off and reality sets in. When your fancy clothes are worn out and you're eating ramen noodles instead of dining at Le Cirque." "Goodbye, Emerson," Charlotte said firmly. "Please don't call me again." She hung up, her hand shaking slightly. "You okay?" Micah asked, reaching over to squeeze her hand. "Yes," Charlotte said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. "Better than okay, actually. I finally told Emerson exactly what I think. It felt good." Micah smiled. "Proud of you." They arrived at the apartment building, a modest 4-story brick structure in a neighborhood Charlotte had never visited before. Sam, a friendly man with a shaved head and tattoo sleeves, met them at the entrance. "Any friend of Micah's is a friend of mine," he said, shaking Charlotte's hand. "The place isn't fancy, but it's clean and the neighbors are decent folks. Mostly working people, a few students from the community college." The apartment was on the 3rd floor, a studio with a small kitchen area and a bathroom that had seen better days. It was probably a quarter the size of her penthouse's walk-in closet, but the windows let in good light, and the floors were clean, and most importantly, it was hers. "I'll take it," Charlotte said, not even needing to think about it. "When can I move in?" "Today if you want," Sam said. "First month's rent and deposit, and it's yours." Charlotte wrote out a check. Her first major expense with her own money. It felt significant somehow. This transaction that wasn't backed by her father's wealth or influence. "Congratulations," Sam said, handed her the keys. "Welcome to independent living." After Sam left, Charlotte and Micah stood in the empty apartment, looking around the blank slate of her new life. "So," Micah said, "furniture shopping?" Charlotte laughed. "On a serious budget. I think I saw a thrift store on the corner." "Thrift stores have character," Micah said with a grin. "Better than that sterile designer stuff anyway." They spent the afternoon hunting for bargains. A futon that would serve as both couch and bed, a small table with 2 chairs, some basic kitchen supplies. By evening, the apartment had transformed from an empty space to a modest but functional home. "It's not much," Charlotte said as they sat on the futon, eating pizza they'd ordered to celebrate. But it's mine. It's perfect, Micah said, looking at her with such warmth that Charlotte's heart skipped a beat. You're perfect. Charlotte leaned over and kissed him, a gentle kiss that deepened as Micah pulled her closer. For a moment, everything else fell away. Her father's anger, Emerson's threats, the uncertain future ahead. There was only Micah, solid and real, his arms around her, his heart beating against hers. Stay, she whispered against his lips. Stay with me tonight. Micah pulled back slightly, searching her face. Are you sure? Everything's happening so fast, Charlotte. I don't want you to rush into anything you're not ready for. Charlotte touched his face, tracing the line of his jaw with her fingertips. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I love you, Micah. I think I've loved you since that first night at the party, when you looked at me and really saw me. I love you too, Micah said softly. But... No buts, Charlotte interrupted. Not tonight. Tonight is just us. Just this moment. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow. Micah smiled, his eyes warm with emotion. No buts, he agreed, pulling her close again. Just us. As the city lights twinkled outside her new apartment windows, Charlotte gave herself completely to the moment, to Micah, to the love she'd found against all odds. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, she knew, but tonight belonged to them. The next morning, Charlotte woke to the unfamiliar feeling of Micah's arms around her. For a moment, she lay still, savoring the warmth and security of his embrace. Then her phone buzzed with a text message. Carefully, trying not to wake Micah, she reached for her phone. The message was from an unknown number. You've made a serious mistake, Charlotte. Actions have consequences, not just for you, but for those you care about. H, her father. Somehow, he'd found her new number, just as Emerson had. A chill ran through her as she read the message again. It wasn't just the words, but the tone, cold, threatening, ominous. What is it? Micah asked, his voice rough with sleep. Charlotte showed him the text. Micah's expression darkened as he read it. He's trying to scare you, he said, sitting up. Don't let him. It's not me I'm worried about, Charlotte said. It's you. He threatened your house yesterday, remember? What if he actually does something? What if he goes after your job? Or... Hey, Micah interrupted, taking her hands. We knew this wouldn't be easy. Your father isn't the type to just let you go. But we can handle whatever he throws at us. Together. Charlotte wanted to believe him, but fear had taken root in her heart. Harold Bancroft was a powerful man with far-reaching influence. He could make their lives very difficult if he chose to. I need to find a job, she said, forcing herself to focus on practical matters. Today. I'll help, Micah said. And I need to get to work, too. Bills don't pay themselves. They got dressed and had a quick breakfast of coffee and toast. As they were about to leave, Charlotte's phone rang, the same unknown number that had texted earlier. Don't answer it, Micah advised. Nothing good will come from talking to your father right now. But Charlotte felt compelled to answer. Maybe, just maybe, her father had calmed down. Maybe he was calling to reconcile. Hello, she said cautiously. Charlotte. Harold's voice was clipped, businesslike. I see you found a new place to live. Quite a step down from what you're used to. Charlotte's blood ran cold. How did he know where she was? What do you want, father? To offer you one last chance, Harold said. Come home. End this ridiculous infatuation with the waiter. Return to your real life. If you do, all will be forgiven. Your position at the foundation, your apartment, your trust fund, all restored. And if I don't, Harold's voice hardened, then I will be forced to protect the Bancroft name by any means necessary, starting with your new friend and his quaint little house. Charlotte felt sick. Are you threatening Micah? I'm stating facts, Harold replied coldly. Actions have consequences, Charlotte. You've chosen to align yourself with someone beneath your station. Now you both will face the fallout from that choice. Lead him out of this, Charlotte said, her voice shaking with anger. This is between you and me. It became about in the moment you threw away your future for a nobody, Harold said. Think carefully about what you're doing, Charlotte. Is he really worth losing everything for? The line went dead before Charlotte could respond. She lowered the phone slowly, her hand trembling. What did he say? Micah asked, though his expression suggested he already knew. He threatened you, Charlotte said, her voice barely above a whisper. He knows where I live. He's going to come after you to get to me. Micah's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. Let him try. I've dealt with bullies before. Not like my father, Charlotte said. He has resources, connections. He could destroy your life with a few phone calls. So what do we do? Give in? Let him win. Micah shook his head. I can't accept that, Charlotte. And I don't think you can either. Not really. Charlotte looked at this man who had become so important to her in such a short time. This man who had shown her what real love felt like. This man who was now in danger because of her. I don't know what to do, she admitted, tears filling her eyes. I love you, Micah, but I can't be the reason your life falls apart. Micah pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. We'll figure this out, he promised. Together. Your father might be powerful, but he's not invincible, and neither are we. As Charlotte clung to Micah, she wished she could believe him, but a part of her, the part that had grown up watching Harold Bancroft get his way by any means necessary, feared that this brief taste of freedom and love was about to come to a painful end. And the worst part was, she had no idea how to stop it. The next week passed in a blur of activity. Charlotte applied for jobs at every school, daycare center, and community program she could find. Most never called back. A few granted her interviews, only to grow suspicious when they realized who she was. The Bancroft name, once a golden ticket, had become a liability. They think I'm slumming it, Charlotte told Micah one evening as they sat in her tiny apartment. Or that I'm a spy for my father, or that I'll quit as soon as I get bored with playing poor. Give it time, Micah advised. The right opportunity will come along. But time was running out. Charlotte's small savings wouldn't last forever, and Harold's threats against Micah hung over them like a storm cloud. So far, nothing had happened. Micah still had his jobs at the cafe and the catering company. His house remained undisturbed. But Charlotte couldn't shake the feeling that her father was simply biding his time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Maybe I should talk to him, Charlotte suggested as they washed dishes together in her small kitchen. Try to reason with him. Micah shook his head. Your father doesn't want reason, Charlotte. He wants control. Going back to him now would just confirm that his tactics worked. But what if he really does come after you? What if he takes your house, gets you fired? I couldn't live with myself if that happened because of me. Micah turned to face her, his hands still wet from the dishwater. Listen to me. Whatever happens, it's not because of you. It's because your father is a controlling man who can't accept that his daughter has a mind of her own. Don't take on guilt that isn't yours. Charlotte wanted to believe him, but the next morning, she got a harsh reminder of her father's reach. I'm sorry, Charlotte, Sam said when she stopped by his office to pay her second month's rent. But I can't renew your lease when this month is up. What? Why not? Charlotte asked, stunned. I paid on time. I haven't caused any problems. Sam looked uncomfortable. It's not about that. Someone's buying the building. New owner, new rules. They're raising the rent by 50% and requiring income verification for all tenants. 3 times the monthly rent. That's impossible for most people here, Charlotte said. No one in this building makes that kind of money. I know, Sam said grimly. That's the point. They want everyone out so they can renovate and attract a higher class of tenant. A sick feeling settled in Charlotte's stomach. Who's buying the building, Sam? Sam hesitated. Some corporation. B&G Holdings, I think. Bancroft and Grayson. Her father and Emerson. This is because of me, isn't it? Charlotte said, her voice hollow. They're doing this to get to me. Sam shrugged helplessly. I don't know the details. All I know is that everyone has 30 days to either qualify under the new requirements or move out. Charlotte walked back to her apartment in a daze. This was just the beginning. She knew. Her father was showing her what he could do. Not just to her, but to innocent people around her. She called Micah immediately. "They're buying the building," she told him, pacing her small apartment. "My father and Emerson. They're forcing everyone out, including me." "Are you sure it's them?" "BNG Holdings," Charlotte said. "Bancroft and Grayson. It's them, Micah. And it's just the start." "Stay calm," Micah said, though she could hear the worry in his voice. "We'll figure this out. I get off at 2. I'll come straight over, and we can make a plan." But by the time Micah arrived at her apartment, things had gotten worse. He burst through the door, his face tight with anger. "They fired me," he said without preamble. "Both jobs, the cafe and the catering company. Both got calls from some lawyer claiming I'd stolen from clients." "That's ridiculous," Charlotte exclaimed. "Everyone knows you'd never do that." "Doesn't matter," Micah said, slumping onto the futon. "The damage is done. The cafe owner said he couldn't risk his reputation, and the catering company said they have a zero-tolerance policy for theft allegations." Charlotte felt sick. This was exactly what she'd feared. "Did they mention my father? Or Emerson?" "No names," Micah said. "Just concerned parties who had evidence. Evidence that doesn't exist, of course." Charlotte sat beside him, taking his hand. "This is my fault. I should never have dragged you into this." "You didn't drag me anywhere," Micah said firmly. "I chose this. I chose you. But now you've lost your jobs, and I'm about to lose my apartment, and it's only going to get worse." Charlotte's voice broke. "My father won't stop until he's destroyed everything good in my life, until he forces me back into the cage." Micah was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "What if we left?" "Left? You mean left town?" Micah nodded. "Start fresh somewhere else. Somewhere your father's influence doesn't reach." "Is there such a place?" Charlotte asked bitterly. "Harold Bancroft has connections everywhere." "Not everywhere," Micah insisted. "We could go to another state, maybe even another country. Somewhere we could build a life together, without his shadow hanging over us." Charlotte considered it. The idea was tempting. Escape, freedom, a chance to truly start over. But it would mean Micah giving up everything he'd worked for. "What about your brother?" she asked softly. "Marcus gets out in a few months. And your mother's house. You've been fighting so hard to keep it." Pain flashed across Micah's face. "I know, but if your father is determined to take it anyway—" "No," Charlotte said suddenly, standing up. "No, I won't let him do this. I won't let him drive us away from everything you care about. There has to be another way." "Charlotte." "I'm going to talk to him," Charlotte declared, face to face. "Not to beg, but to make him understand that I won't be intimidated, that we won't be intimidated." Micah looked skeptical. "Do you really think that will work? From what you've told me about your father, he's not the type to back down." "Maybe not," Charlotte admitted, "but I have to try. I can't run away, and I can't watch him destroy your life. So I'll confront him on my terms, not his." "Then I'm coming with you," Micah said, standing to join her. Charlotte shook her head. "No, this is something I need to do alone. It's time I stood up to my father, without anyone else fighting my battles." Micah studied her face, then nodded slowly. "Okay, but promise me you'll be careful. Men like your father don't like being challenged, especially not by the people they think they own." "I promise," Charlotte said, reaching up to touch his face. "And I promise I won't give in. Whatever he says, whatever he threatens, I won't go back to that life. I won't give you up." Micah kissed her, a kiss full of love and fear and hope. "I believe you," he whispered against her lips. "Now make him believe you, too." Bancroft Tower loomed above the city skyline, a monument to Harold Bancroft's power and wealth. Charlotte stood across the street, staring up at the gleaming glass and steel structure that had once represented her future. Now it felt like a prison she'd narrowly escaped. Taking a deep breath, she crossed the street and walked through the revolving doors into the marble-floored lobby. The security guard at the desk did a double take when he saw her. "Miss Bancroft," he said, surprise evident in his voice. "We weren't expecting you." I need to see my father, Charlotte said firmly. Is he in? The guard looked uncomfortable. I'll need to call up. Mr. Bancroft left instructions about you. I'm sure he did, Charlotte interrupted. But you're going to let me up anyway. Because despite what my father might think, I'm still a Bancroft. And this is still my family's company. Something in her tone must have convinced him, because the guard picked up his phone and dialed the executive floor. Mr. Bancroft? Yes, sir, I have. Yes, your daughter is here. She's requesting to see you. He listened for a moment, then nodded. Yes, sir. Right away. He hung up and looked at Charlotte with newfound respect. He'll see you. His assistant will meet you at the elevator. Thank you, Charlotte said, holding her head high as she walked to the elevator bank. The ride to the top floor seemed to take forever. Charlotte used the time to gather her thoughts, to prepare for the confrontation ahead. She wouldn't yell. She wouldn't beg. She would be calm, rational, and absolutely firm. When the elevator doors opened, Janet, her father's longtime assistant, was waiting. Her usually warm smile was noticeably absent. Charlotte, she said stiffly, your father is in a meeting, but he'll see you in 5 minutes. You can wait in the conference room. Thank you, Janet, Charlotte said, following the older woman down the familiar hallway. How have you been? Fine, Janet replied without elaborating. Her cool demeanor hurt more than Charlotte had expected. Janet had been like a surrogate aunt to her over the years, always ready with a kind word or a piece of candy when Charlotte visited the office as a child. The conference room was empty, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. Charlotte stood at the glass, looking out at the skyline, at the tiny streets and buildings below. Somewhere down there was Micah, waiting for her, believing in her. The door opened behind her. Charlotte turned to see her father enter, his expression unreadable. Charlotte, he said, his voice neutral. This is unexpected. Is it? Charlotte asked. After what you've done, did you really think I wouldn't confront you? Harold closed the door and moved to the head of the conference table. He didn't sit, but rested his hands on the back of the chair, his posture radiating authority. I assume you're referring to the apartment building, he said. A sound investment. That neighborhood is up and coming. And the false accusations against Micah, were those a sound investment too? A flicker of something, annoyance perhaps, or grudging respect, crossed Harold's face. I see you connected the dots. Good. I raised you to be intelligent, at least. You raised me to be a pawn, Charlotte corrected. A bargaining chip in your business deals. But I'm not playing that game anymore, father. So you said, Harold replied coolly. Yet here you are in my office. Let me guess. You've reconsidered my offer? Ready to come home, leave the waiter behind, and rejoin the real world. Charlotte shook her head. I'm here to tell you to stop. Stop threatening Micah. Stop trying to control my life. Stop using your power to punish me for making my own choices. Harold laughed, a sound without humor. Or what, Charlotte? What exactly do you think you can do to stop me? It was a question Charlotte had been dreading, because the truth was she had no leverage, no power, nothing to threaten her father with, except the truth. I'll go public, she said quietly, about everything. The arranged marriage to Emerson, the way you've used me as a corporate asset my entire life, the threats, the manipulation, all of it. Harold's smile faded. No one would care. Arranged marriages aren't exactly shocking news, Charlotte. Maybe not, Charlotte agreed. But what about the insider trading? Harold went very still. What are you talking about? The Westlake deal, Charlotte said, watching her father's face carefully. 3 years ago, you had information that wasn't public yet, and you used it to buy shares before the announcement. I saw the paperwork on your desk the night before. The timestamps didn't match your public statements. It was a shot in the dark, based on a vague memory and a hunch. But the way Harold's face paled told Charlotte she'd hit her mark. You have no proof, Harold said, his voice dangerously quiet. Don't I? Charlotte bluffed. I was your dutiful daughter for 26 years, father. I saw things, heard things, kept my mouth shut, because that's what Bancrofts do. But I'm not playing by Bancroft rules anymore. Harold studied her face, as if seeing her for the first time. You wouldn't. It would hurt the company. Thousands of employees would suffer. I don't want to, Charlotte said honestly. But I will if I have to. If it's the only way to make you leave Mike and me alone, I'll do it. Harold walked to the window, his back to Charlotte. For a long moment, he said nothing, just stared out at the city he'd spent his life trying to conquer. You really love him, he finally said, his voice oddly subdued. This, Micah. Yes, Charlotte said simply. I do. Harold turned to face her. Enough to blackmail your own father? To risk destroying the family name? Enough to fight for him, Charlotte corrected. The way no one ever fought for me. Something flickered in Harold's eyes. Regret, perhaps, or simply resignation. Your mother would have been proud of you, he said unexpectedly. She always said you had a fire in you that I lacked. Charlotte was stunned into silence. Her father never spoke of her mother. Not like this. Elizabeth fought me too, you know, Harold continued, his gaze distant. Not about business. She understood that world. But about you. She didn't want you raised as a Bancroft asset. She wanted you to have choices, freedom, things I never understood the value of. Then why? Charlotte asked, her voice barely above a whisper. After she died, why did you try so hard to control every aspect of my life? Because control was all I knew, Harold admitted. Because I was afraid. Afraid of what? Of losing you, too, Harold said simply. Of you making choices I didn't understand. Of you walking away. Like I did anyway, Charlotte said softly. Harold nodded. Like you did anyway. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of 15 years of misunderstanding and distance between them. I won't give him up, Charlotte finally said. I won't come back to the life you planned for me. But I don't want to be your enemy, Father. Harold sighed, suddenly looking older than his years. What do you want from me, Charlotte? I want you to call off the dogs, Charlotte said firmly. Stop the takeover of the apartment building. Clear Micah's name with his employers. Let us live our lives without your interference. And in return, I'll keep your secrets. And maybe, eventually, we can try to build a real relationship. Not as CEO and corporate asset, but as father and daughter. Harold was quiet for a long moment, considering. Then he extended his hand, as if closing a business deal. I'll stop interfering in your life. But I want something, too. Charlotte hesitated. What? Dinner, Harold said. Once a month. Just you. If this Micah is as important to you as you claim, I want to know why. I want to understand the daughter I apparently never knew. Charlotte was surprised by the request, and by the vulnerability behind it. Slowly, she reached out and took her father's hand. Dinner once a month. I can do that. As they shook hands, Charlotte felt something shift between them. Not forgiveness, exactly, but the possibility of a new beginning. A relationship built on respect rather than control. There's one more thing, Charlotte said as they released hands. Micah's brother, Marcus. He's in prison for a mistake he made as a teenager. I want the best lawyer you know to review his case. See if there's ground for early release or appeal. Harold raised an eyebrow. You drive a hard bargain. I learn from the best, Charlotte replied, a small smile tugging at her lips. Harold nodded. I'll make some calls. No promises, but I'll see what can be done. As Charlotte turned to leave, Harold called after her. Charlotte. She paused at the door. Yes. Are you happy? Truly happy in this new life you've chosen? Charlotte thought about Micah, about the tiny apartment, about the struggles ahead, and she smiled. Yes, Father. For the first time in my life, I'm truly happy. Harold nodded, something like acceptance in his eyes. Then I suppose that's what matters. Your mother would say so, at least. Thank you, Charlotte said softly, and left her father standing alone in the conference room, surrounded by the empire he'd built, but separated from the daughter he'd lost. So he just agreed? Micah asked incredulously as they sat on a bench in the park later that day. Just like that. Not exactly, Charlotte said, leaning against his shoulder. I may have bluffed a bit about some insider trading evidence, and I agreed to have dinner with him once a month. Michael whistled. Risky move, but effective, apparently. He also said he'd look into your brother's case, Charlotte added. See if there's ground for early release or appeal. Micah straightened, his eyes wide. Seriously? Charlotte, that would mean everything to Marcus, to both of us. I know, Charlotte said, squeezing his hand. That's why I asked. Micah shook his head in amazement. So what now? We just go on with our lives? Trust that your father will keep his word. For now, Charlotte said. And if he doesn't, well, I still have my bluff. Micah laughed. You're something else, Charlotte Bancroft. Standing up to Harold Bancroft like that. I wish I could have seen his face. Charlotte smiled, remembering the moment her father had realized she wasn't backing down. It was pretty satisfying. But what about you? What will you do about your jobs? Sam already called. Micah said there was a misunderstanding, and my job at the cafe is waiting whenever I want it back. Haven't heard from the catering company yet, but I'm guessing I will. And we can stay in the apartment? Micah nodded. Sam says the building sale fell through suddenly. Some issue with the paperwork. Rents are staying the same, at least for now. Charlotte leaned her head on Micah's shoulder, relief washing over her. So we're free. Really free. Looks that way, Micah agreed, his arm tightening around her. Now we just have to figure out what to do with that freedom. I had an interview this morning, Charlotte said, at the community center on West Street. They need someone to coordinate their after-school programs for at-risk kids. The pay is terrible, but the work looks meaningful. That's perfect for you, Micah said warmly. Did they offer you the job? Charlotte nodded. I start next week, and the director mentioned they've been wanting to add creative writing to their programs, but haven't found the right person to teach it. Micah's eyes widened. Are you suggesting that you dust off those poetry skills? Charlotte grinned. Absolutely. It would only be a few hours a week to start, but it's something, a way back to what you love. Micah was quiet for a moment, emotion playing across his face. You know, he finally said, when my mom died and Marcus went to prison, I thought that was it for dreams. That survival was the best I could hope for. And now, Charlotte prompted gently. Micah looked at her, his eyes full of love. Now I'm starting to believe in dreams again. Because of you. Charlotte felt tears prick her eyes. We'll build them together, she promised. All of them. The community center, a home of our own, a future where we both get to be who we really are. Speaking of futures, Micah said, suddenly looking nervous. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn velvet box. I've been carrying this around for a week, waiting for the right moment. Charlotte's breath caught as he opened the box to reveal a simple silver ring with a small, sparkling diamond. It was my mother's, Mike explained. The one nice piece of jewelry she owned. She always said it should go to the woman I love. Micah, Charlotte whispered, her heart pounding. I know it's fast, Micah said quickly. And I know it's not the kind of ring you're used to. It's not big or flashy or expensive. It's perfect, Charlotte interrupted, tears falling freely now. It's absolutely perfect. Micah took her hand, his own trembling slightly. Charlotte Bancroft, I've loved you since the moment you looked at me like I was a person worth seeing. Will you marry me? Not for business or status or family connections, but just because we love each other. Yes, Charlotte said without hesitation. 1,000 times yes. As Micah slipped the ring onto her finger, Charlotte felt a sense of rightness that no amount of wealth or privilege had ever given her. This was what she'd been searching for her entire life. Not grand gestures or expensive gifts, but simple, honest love. The kind of love worth choosing, even when the choice was hard. 6 months later, Charlotte stood in the garden of Micah's mother's house. Their house now, surrounded by a small group of people who truly mattered to them. Micah's brother Marcus, released early thanks to the effort of Harold, high-powered attorney, stood tall in a new suit, pride and gratitude in his eyes as he watched his brother prepare to take his vows.